My name is Chekhovich, and for 6 years I have been working at the Anti-Corruption Foundation, the organization that was founded in 2011 in Moscow by the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. So I'm going to tell you what it is like to be a CFO of the main opposition power of the country, which fights against such evil as Vladimir Putin and his regime. And of course, about the role of Bitcoin in this fight. So, in many ways, my job is like any other. I come to the office 5 times a week and do my working duties. But with the only difference, on a daily basis, the government tries to stop you from doing what you do in different ways. Sometimes they block your bank accounts, or they raid your house with searchings. Sometimes they imprison your colleagues or even try to kill your boss. So in 2016, Alexei Navalny announced his participation in the presidential elections in Russia, and we began our crowdfunding campaign. Already at that time, it was clear that it wasn't safe for us to keep all the donations we received from our donors only in fiat, because it's a well-known fact that Russian banking system is fully controlled by the regime. And also some of the donors wanted to remain anonymous. So that was the moment when we started to use Bitcoin in our work. And little did we know that it was the right decision, because every time when the government tried to attack us with the help of the banking system, which happened many times, we always had access to our Bitcoin savings that we could use in order to continue our activities in Russia. So one day in January 2019, I was sitting at my working desk doing my usual financial duties, such as making some payments, counting salaries and taxes, and so on. And I refreshed the page of our online bank suddenly, and I was shocked to see the negative balance of almost minus 1 trillion rubles there, which was approximately 13 billion euro at that time. As a financial director, I almost had a heart attack. I even screamed out loud, because I have responsibility to provide salaries for more than 300 employees all over the country, and we had more than 30 offices, and I had to pay rent everywhere. And this is what happened. I immediately called the bank to clarify the situation, but they couldn't give me any explanation. They simply told me that our bank account was under arrest, but they couldn't even provide me with any documents proving this fact. So the following day, we found out that there was a fabricated criminal case against our foundation, one of many. But the most disturbing fact was that the bank was actually colluding with the regime, and they debanked us unlawfully the day before the court's decision. And this kind of situation occurred to us many times, because it was the simplest method for the regime to target us, since the Russian banking system is fully transparent and controlled by the government. And after debanking our legal entities, which happened many times, because every time we had to start a new legal entity and we had to open new bank accounts, so they blocked all of them. And after that, they began attacking our employees by debanking all of them individually. They even blocked the bank account of Alexei Navalny and his family members, even if he was never an employee and he never received any money from our legal entities. One of my colleagues went so far as to dig a hole in her backyard and stash her savings there underground, because it was no longer safe for her to keep her money on the bank account, and she also didn't want to keep it in cash at home, because the police would occasionally raid our houses and they simply confiscated all the cash they found every time. So these are just a few examples of challenges we faced while working with fiat in Russia. But in reality, every single day was such a struggle. I'm not going to tell about every challenge we had because I'm limited in time, but every day we had something like that. And in the end, people were scared to receive any money from us. It became hard to find a contractor willing to print some anti-Putin posters for us, or to find a landlord willing to rent out an office space for us in some town of Russia. Because receiving money from our foundation would put their bank accounts at risk of being arrested. So, as many of you are aware, in 2020, Alexei Navalny was poisoned by Putin's people, and he nearly died. He survived, but after that, he was imprisoned, and our foundation was designated as an extremist organization, and we were forced to leave the country. Now we're located in Europe, in Lithuania, and we continue our work. But all of our fiat donors in Russia were put at risk due to banks sharing their data with the government. Actually, many of our fiat donors were subjected to police questioning simply for supporting us financially. Now our fiat donors are vulnerable to being labeled as extremists themselves. Some of you can say, okay, but you have moved to Europe and you're safe now, what's the problem? But we couldn't predict that European banking regulations would become such a big issue for us. Let's make it simple. We fight against Putin's regime. Isn't it obvious that we are the good guys doing the right things? Unfortunately for European banks, not at all. For example, for a long time, we couldn't open a bank account for our new European legal entity simply because the entity's name contained the word Russia. Banks just didn't want to have any business with us as soon as they see the word Russia. And it was not the only case. For example, one of the board members has a Russian passport, no bank account for you. You want to buy crypto for your legal entity? Debanked. You want to send crypto to Russians? Debanked. These are all the results of European banking regulations. Banks don't want to investigate. If we fight against Putin, if we are Russian opposition, and even if they Google us, what will they find? They will find all the fabricated criminal cases that we have, that we are money launderers, extremists, and so on. And they are not going to dig deeper to find any truthful information because the anti-money laundering compliance costs too much for them. So it's easier for them just to reject us with no explanations. So we're still facing obstacles when it comes to converting the fiat donations that we receive now into Bitcoin. But we have a great responsibility to support Russian political prisoners such as Alexei Navalny, Russian activists who fight against the regime inside the country and they risk their lives and freedom, and advocates assisting those people. We cannot use fiat in order to support them, but we cannot buy Bitcoin as well. Unfortunately, we remain in a gray zone for European banks. And there are many organizations like us and human rights defenders, humanitarian organizations, and everyone who fell victim of authoritarian regimes and smear campaigns. So I personally struggle to find a bank who would allow us to buy Bitcoin directly from our foundation's bank account. Additionally to that, banks have to comply with the anti-money laundering and know your customer procedures, which means that even if we have a bank account and we want to send Bitcoin to our Russian activists, we have to provide all the personal data of our activists to the bank. In trying to ensure safety for our Russian activists, we are forced to expose all of their personal data to the banks, and this information can easily leak by the request of third countries. If this information were to leak to the Russian government, it would result in severe penalties and arrests of the recipients. Besides that, we have another problem of receiving money from our Russian donors now. But Russians are actually our target audience because we are an NGO working with Russians and they're our main source of income. Russians cannot use fiat in order to support us because Russia is excluded from the international banking system. But also, as you remember, the Russian banking system is transparent to the government, and it's not the brightest idea to donate to so-called extremist organization if you don't want to spend 10 years of your life in Russian jail. And we are not alone in facing such difficulties. Not only Russians who have left the country, there are many organizations like us and many people like us facing these kind of problems all over the world. And to my shame, only a year ago, I discovered that there is a whole global resistance movement against financial surveillance all over the world. And every Bitcoin user is actually a part of this resistance movement, whether they are aware of it or not, because they boost the adoption of Bitcoin globally. A year ago, I was invited to join a group of activists from various countries of the world in order to raise awareness among European authorities and decision makers on the issue of Bitcoin regulations. Sadly, many regulators seem to forget about those who suffer under authoritarian regimes and those who fight against them when they try to over-regulate Bitcoin the same way as fiat. Over the past year, we have had numerous meetings with European authorities, and we even held a special event in the Parliamentary Assembly in France in order to do our advocacy for Bitcoin. And we actually succeeded to find some support and understanding of many parliamentarians. And we actually influenced some changes in the regulations. Additional to that, I'm honored to mention that over the past year, we have formed alliances with the most brilliant minds and skilled developers from the world of Bitcoin. For example, my friends from Fedimint have been eager to assist us in order to find solutions for us and our donors. And another case, 1 year ago, I personally met with the founders of the Moon wallet, and I discovered it to be one of the best non-custodial wallets available. I simply included this knowledge into the Bitcoin instruction I created for our Russian Bitcoin donors, and they started to use the wallet. And shortly after we released this instruction, we received a huge donation of 4 Bitcoins to our wallet. So those who fight against, those who create such tools may not even realize that they can truly contribute to our fight against dictatorships, and they can truly help us to provide freedom and safety and even save someone's lives. So our story may sound like there are only challenges and no solutions. But in fact, if we recognize that we can be helpful for each other, activists like us doing advocacy for Bitcoin and for the tools, and Bitcoin users and developers, we can really make positive change together. Because when it comes to fighting against dictatorships, privacy and self-custody are very important aspects of any financial operations. So we activists do what we can in order to promote privacy, in order to protect these ideas of privacy throughout our democracy. And we really need technical help of developers who create high-quality, non-custodial tools, decentralized platforms. So I hope that our story may inspire someone or give a boost to your ideas. If you develop something, or you just use Bitcoin, or you spread the ideas about it, you already make positive change. So please don't underestimate your ability to change the world for the better. And don't hesitate to contact me if you have any ideas on how to support our case, or if you want to collaborate with us. Thank you so much.